Hello everyone, welcome back to Books with Genghis Khan. I'm Ben, and today I have for you my July reading wrap-up. And it was a spectacular reading month for me in terms of quality. I got to spend time with some of my favorite authors in the world and some of my favorite audiobook narrators at the same time. And I had a blast being a captain in the Spiffbo 9 themed readathon on the Keymark Discord. That's AR Witham's YouTube channel as well, and we'll do our final scoreboard reveal, I think, tomorrow night. So if you've been in that readathon, you can see how it all played out. I think my team has a solid chance of coming out on top, but we'll see. And so to get to my reads, I want to maybe go pretty quickly through the ones I went through on my mid-month check-in. So if you want more in-depth thoughts on those, you could go back to that video a couple weeks ago. But I'll try to go through those and then spend a little more time on the ones that I just read in the last couple weeks. And I had some amazing reads for me, so I am so pumped. And I want to make sure I hit on the audiobooks and the narrators more than, because that's a big part of my reading experience, and I really want to be able to gush about that as well. So, first read of the month was a gem. That's Elder Race by Adrian Tchaikovsky. That is a standalone 200-page novel, maybe long novella, depending on how things might count, but it felt fully satisfying on its own. Just extremely compelling story that was an alternating POV structure between the two main characters, and the book I just finished had that same structure, and I think that's one that just really works for me. I loved it in Leviathan Wakes as well, and I don't see it too often, but I kind of wish more authors would do that, since I find that so engaging to just switch back and forth between two different POVs. The audiobook for this was riveting. I did this a lot immersively. The narrator, John Lee, it's only my second audiobook with John Lee, was incredible. I can't wait to do more John Lee audiobooks. I think he did the Peter McLean War for the Rose Throne ones. Can't wait now because he was so great, just perfect for these POVs in this story, and changing subtly his voice to really match each of the two POVs since they were so different from each other. Amazing Adrian Tchaikovsky standalone. Can't wait to continue making my way through his backlist so I can maybe eventually catch up to him because he releases so many books. Next, I read a Bernard Cornwell standalone. That's Stonehenge. So I think this is from around the year 2000, so right in the middle of his writing prime, soon after the Warlord Chronicles. He wrote this book set in about 2000 BC that just fully imagines the culture and the religion and the characters that were responsible for the creation of Stonehenge. And the narrator was also Jonathan Keeble, who did the Warlord Chronicles, and so many people love his narration. He's one of my favorites also, just so perfect for this old kind of, really ancient setting. And this book was just so immersive. I really felt like I was living in 2000 BC Britain, where just religious superstitions and survival, very practical survival concerns just dominate people's thoughts and priorities on a day-to-day basis. There's some really touching romance in here, not too different from what you might know from Warlord Chronicles. It's a family saga at the heart, with three brothers at the center of the tale. There's a few riveting action scenes, but that's definitely not the focus of this book. It's really just following one main character over the course of many years as we see what led to and then the actual construction of Stonehenge. So if that sounds interesting at all, and if you love Jonathan Keeble, that would be a solid one to fit in as a standalone. Not too big of an investment to just get this fully satisfying story. I'm so glad being part of the Spiffbo 9 themed read-along got me to pick up one of the books in that competition, because I had a great time with Becoming a Druid by Mike Mollman. So this is a planned 7-book series with 4 main novels in the Protectors of Brittany. So it's a fantastical version of Britain around, I think, like 300 BC is when this is set. And so there's going to be 4 main novels. This is the first one, and then kind of 0.5 books with some short fiction and novellas set between each of the main novels. And I absolutely loved this main character, and I watched a great interview between Witham and the author Mike Mollman, and I'll try to link that in the description, where I learned a little bit of the backstory behind the series and what it was like for Mike to try to start his new kind of a journey as an author, fairly late in life, and just seeing how he wanted to design a protagonist, this main character that is unconventional and that we don't get to see too often. Someone who does not get along very well with people, but who's easy to root for, at least for me, because he's extremely honor bound. He's very sophisticated, a deep thinker, very sensitive, but kind of an outcast socially. His biggest superpower is probably his ability to commune with animals and do all kinds of great animal transformations into any kind of animal he really wants. And the magic here was really fresh and creative and fun. This feels like high epic fantasy, and a real genre bender though, because Druids are a historical group and Britain is a real, Earth place, but this feels almost like a secondary world fantasy. Also, wonderful naked hardbacks, which are just great to look at and hold, and the narration was top quality by someone I don't think has many credits to his name, James Munier, but he's someone that Mollman picked because of his particular kind of dialect of where he's from. It's kind of the southwest region of England where this takes place. And just an interesting voice and really fun narration, I thought, as well. So really great audiobooks if you'd want to pick it up in that form. Then I returned to a character that I had not been with for about 4 years, and that was Fitzchivalry Farseer in Fool's Errand, the first book in the Tawny Man trilogy. So this book was amazing. The way this book started couldn't have been more perfect for me after being away from the plotting of the Six Duchies and the setting and the character for that many years, because we spent hundreds of pages kind of just getting slice of life and where different characters are interacting and catching each other up on events over the past bunch of years that took place during the time skip between the end of Farseer and this book, where Live Ship Traders took place, which is definitely one of my favorite series of all time now. And I loved the whole beginning section of this book. It really hit like a ton of bricks for me, because Fitz is in his 30s, where I'm also at in life, and just his philosophical musings and thinkings really hit home in a lot of ways. And once the plot really kicked in, though, man, was it suspenseful and tense and utterly engrossing, with some trademark Robin Hobb deep character work, really great integration of the magic, and a lot of themes that I resonated with, themes around companionship, figuring out exactly how or where one wants to spend their life to be most fulfilling, and maybe that's ever changing in terms of what will make you happy. Some intense real world themes around kind of prejudice and people not being able to be out in the open about who they are, and in this case it's around magical taboos with really interesting magic, and I just loved everything Hobb was doing here. I did a lot of this by audio with a new narrator for me, and that was James Langton, and he knocked it out of the park. I love this narrator for this story, and I just love it when narrators are just the perfect fit for those authors and those particular books and characters, and the voice that Langton gave to Fitz's animal companion, to other characters like the Fool, just pitch perfect. The audio was so immersive and emotional. Just A++ there. Very happy with this new narrator. No complaints for me. I am riveted to the whole realm of the Elderlings at this point. Can't wait to continue. After Fool's Errand, I flipped back into the Protectors of Brittany world with Sins and Sorrows by Mike Mollman. That's the in-between book, book 1.5, which has 3 Grommy short stories. Grommy's our POV character, and 2 of those take place before becoming a druid. We get a couple important moments in Grommy's life, how he got first involved with the druids, and then a really crucial confrontation he had with his first druid master. Then we also get a short story that takes place right after book 1 and gives you a hint about the plotting to come a little bit. And then there's 2 novellas. And the first novella was definitely a highlight of this read, with a minor character from book 1, Grami's sister-in-law, Kanwena, getting the POV. So the first time we have a new POV in this series. And I like this when authors maybe have a first-person single POV series or story, and then just expand it out with short stories or novellas that give you a different whole perspective on the world. And Kanwena can do the mind magic of the Sorum people, which is a specific kind of magic that Grami cannot do, and so we get to be in the mind of someone who is interacting with people kind of through mental telepathy. So that was fascinating, and we get hints about the more epic, overarching plot and political machinations and different new players that we didn't see in book 1. So that was a really enjoyable novella in there. The second novella is what was holding this book overall back a little bit for me, since I didn't love the POV character we get. That's Alfswitch, the thief. Mollman's doing some daring things here, and unconventional things, but this character really tested the limits of my ability to feel sympathy and empathize for a POV character. Just doing some absolutely horrific things throughout the novella. A real kind of rogue story where the rogue doesn't necessarily have a heart of gold, or it makes many bad and maybe ethically wrong choices. So interesting choice for Mollman, and certainly plays into the overarching plot, but maybe not as much as the Kanwena novella. So, but overall, 4 out of the 5 stories in here I did really like, and is a solid addition to the series, and it is getting me very pumped to continue with the next novel. Which takes me to my final read of the month. I didn't think I was actually going to get one in after Sins and Sorrows, but this had me so hooked. I read it in just a few days and finished it up the last day of the month, late last night, and that is Yumi and the Nightmare Painter by Brandon Sanderson, the most recent of his standalone secret project releases. And this one might vault into the top spot for my favorite ever, at least fantasy standalone, maybe next to Project Hail Mary for sci-fi. But this was absolutely stunning in just about every way, including the physical book and the art throughout, because the art is my favorite book art that I've ever experienced in my life. I don't want to show off most of the pieces since they'd be spoilers, but the style of the artist and the scenes that they depicted were so meaningful for the characters and the story, and just added to the emotional impact. Man, I just couldn't have loved this book and the art anymore. There's one of the early paintings, but you probably can't see it too well. But so the art was one thing, and it actually resonated a lot with the major theme of the book, since the 2 main characters are artists, and exploring kind of different aspects of the philosophy of art is something the book does a lot of. So really appreciated the physical book. But to get into the text, this is an alternating POV structure where we just flip back and forth between the 2 main characters, and more than almost any other book 1 or standalone I can remember, I was so immediately immersed in the settings, which is really saying something, because there's 2 different settings and they are extremely fantastical, and just feeling grounded in these settings so quickly, but invested in the characters almost instantaneously. I don't know how Sanderson does it for me, but he almost indisputably at this point is probably my favorite author in fantasy. He pulls on my emotions, tugs on those heartstrings more than anyone else seems to be able to. And this was just an emotional read from beginning to end. The characters felt so relatable. They were just these 19-year-olds, and you can probably tell from the cover art, the name. Sanderson's been pretty open about this being more of a romance-heavy book that he wrote since he knows his wife has been asking for more of those from him. And it is just so sweethearted. The characters are so earnest and kind-hearted and great artists, but life has not been so kind to them, and it's been really kind of throwing a lot of challenges and hardships their way. And the way that each of them kind of are able to provide strength to the other was so touching, and able to teach each other kind of important lessons, and even their own artistic abilities, trying to convey those through their particular situation, which was such an interesting premise. And we got some amazing setting work and world building, and the plot reveals here some of the greatest for me that Sanderson's ever done. I flew through this. I did not want to put it down. I did not want to stop reading, but I also was so sad to get through it and to leave the setting and the characters behind, because I grew that attached to them in just about 450 pages. This is actually another Hoyd narrated story, and so I have my Hoyd shirt on in honor of that. And just like as in Tress, I really enjoyed the Hoyd narration. It wasn't as prevalent as it was in Tress, but that added that fun, interesting aspect. But I thought throughout this book, we learned, just as in Tress too, a lot of wise sort of life lessons come through the text, but not in a very preachy way. I just feel like there's a lot of wisdom in Sanderson's writing these days, and it really connects with me on just a lot of levels, as these relatable characters are trying to navigate societal obligations, really isolated social situations, their own kind of identities and ambitions for themselves, or just what would personally make them happy. And I want to give a special shout out to Michael Kramer and Kate Redding, who co-narrated this book. I did this one almost fully, either with the audio on or immersively listening and reading from this beautiful edition at the same time. And they are two of my favorite narrators, and it's probably somewhat due to me having listened to them for many hundreds of hours, more than most other narrators, with all of their Cosmere work and Wheel of Time work. But I think they have spent so long with Sanderson now that they truly get where he's coming from. They can understand the emotions in the writing and the characters so well. I also just enjoy their kind of default narration voices, the sound of their voices, their cadences. They just work so well for me, but I love their dialogue voices they give to different characters. They brought something really special to this read, I think in particular, that really enhanced the experience. So just another absolutely spectacular audiobook for me this month. There have been so many, but I truly love them, and am very happy that they are doing basically all of Sanderson's Cosmere works. And splitting the narration duties also made it kind of very special for this book. So yeah, loved that aspect. And were there any negatives? I think more than most Sanderson books, he gave maybe short shrift to some of the secondary and side characters. I thought some of them were a little more thinly drawn than we usually see, and that would usually bother me a little bit. But since the narrative so is tightly wound around the two protagonists, who are kind of spiritually and almost physically connected to the point where we can't leave them, they can't split apart from each other, they have to figure out everything together and do all this problem solving and identity exploration kind of with each other. And it was just a very unique read for me. Yeah, I fell in love with this book, and I imagine once the details kind of flee, I will really treasure coming back and rereading it over the years. All right, what am I reading now? I have gone back into the Richard Sharp series by Bernard Cornwell. This is a very climactic book in the series. That's Waterloo. That is the famous end to the Napoleonic Wars, and I'm having a great time with it so far in the first third. Rupert Farley as the audiobook narrator is one of the best to ever do it, and so yet again a delightful audio experience. And after that, I usually enjoy reading his historical notes at the back of every Sharp book, which discuss the actual historical events that he covered in the book, and maybe what he made up and what he was inspired by. But he actually wrote a full non-fiction book about the Battle of Waterloo, I imagine because he did a lot of research for writing his novelization of it. And I am probably gonna want to dig into this one. So that's nonfiction by Bernard Cornwell, just about the Battle of Waterloo itself. So it'll be interesting, I think, to see kind of the fictional liberties he took versus the actual way it went down. And then following my once-a-month pattern of continuing the Realm of the Elderlings, I'll be going to book 2 of the Tawny Man trilogy. That's Golden Fool by Robin Hobb. Speaking of my Realm of the Elderlings buddy read, I will be going on to Colin's channel, that's Colin's Corner, Sunday morning for a live chat about Fool's Errand. Can't wait to discuss that with Colin and continue this tale. What a cool cover painting that is. And then I also think I'll be continuing the Protectors of Prytani series by Mike Mollman. This is the second novel to Speak with Elders. So, we got a cool centaur on the cover, amazing naked hardback wraparound painting yet again. Can't wait to see where this goes because I have absolutely no clue. It feels so unpredictable, and can't wait to spend more time with Grami, the protagonist, since he is so interesting and refreshing as a main character. So that is what I'll be reading coming up soon. And before I go, I guess I have to name a book of the month. I absolutely adored Fool's Errand, but I think I felt myself getting more emotional, just those emotions just bubbling up during the read in a real physical way that I could notice as I was reading Yumi and the Nightmare Painter. And so that is going to be my book of the month, very close with Fool's Errand. But just in terms of my own personal grip to the page-o-meter and just how much I was captivated by my imagination and my heart really was captured by this book. So both of those things make this maybe an all-time great read for me. I loved it that much. So if you haven't read it or you're debating whether to get this edition, it is amazing. The audio was spectacular. The whole thing was very personally special. So that was my July preview of what's coming up in August. Let me know what your favorite reads are if you've read any of these and want to mention how you like them. I'll catch you later.